Hello, geometry students. This is Ms. Oberly with lesson 6 for rectangles. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to recognize and apply properties of rectangles. So, there are a few properties you should know. First of all, and I know you know this, but all four angles must be right. Opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. And consecutive angles, the ones that are in a row, are supplementary. The additional property that's new for rectangles is that the diagonals bisect each other, and we're going to talk about one other thing here. Diagonals bisect each other and are also congruent. So that's an important thing to know. They will be congruent if they're a rectangle. All right, let's start off with example 1 here. Looking at the picture at right, a rectangular park has two walking paths as shown. If PS equals 180 meters and PR equals 200 meters, find QT. So this little guy right here. So let's use what we know about rectangles. First, if it's a rectangle, QS will equal PR. Remember, diagonals are congruent. And since QS equals PR, and we know PR is 200, QS will also be 200. Since it's a rectangle, that means it must also be a parallelogram. So the the diagonals must bisect each other. So QT equals ST. So since QT plus ST equals the whole segment, and we know the whole segment is 200, we know that QT is half of 200, which is 100. All right, example 2. Looking at this picture at right, we know this quadrilateral JKLM is a rectangle. So, knowing that if certain angles are defined, we need to find X. So let's mark our picture, and I think before we started here, let me do this. So KJL, where is that angle? Let's mark it in. KJL, is right here. KJL, and JLK is right here. JLK. All right. Well, and to be a rectangle, we know that this angle up here is a right angle. And since this is a right angle, we know that these two angles must add up to 90. So we can use that to do some algebra. Those two angles will add up to 90, so we can say 2x plus 4 plus 7x plus 5 equals 90, and we can solve from there. So x will equal 9. We're going to skip example 3, but remember that the diagonals of parallelograms are congruent, then the parallelogram is therefore a rectangle. And let's look at what that means for us in coordinate geometry. Quadrilateral PQRS has vertices P, Q, R, and S. Determine whether PQRS is a rectangle using the distance formula. So we know, using the distance formula, that all of those sides would be equal. So you know how to use the distance formula. I'm not going to spend time reminding you of that. And it turns out that those opposite sides are equal. The other thing we are going to have to prove is that these diagonals are congruent. So same thing using the distance formula. We're going to do the square root of x minus x squared and the square root of y minus y squared for each of those diagonals. Add them together, take the square root, and it turns out that this is a rectangle because those diagonals are congruent.